Urban explorers of Reddit, what is your creepiest/most horrifying experience? Went to a closed-up mental hospital in my city with some friends at night. Everything was cool until we got to the basement, where there were 5-meter wide and 4-meter high lit tunnel going far to both directions. We headed down one end and found a huge active generator, then we went the other way, and as we were about to hit another intersection, we saw 2 men wearing full green attire and face masks walking at the end of one of the corridors at 2 a.m. We got out of there real quick. Exploring an abandoned construction site. It's a site out in redneck country that's got a bunch of old construction vehicles getting overgrown with plants, and my GF and I decided to go check it out, see what it's all about. We look around and don't see a whole lot. It's about to rain, so we decide to head out. As we are getting in my car, my GF freezes and says, "There's a guy in the woods watching us." I shit myself and ask if she's sure. She repeats herself and says he saw her see him and laid flat on the ground to hide himself. Noped out of there real fucking quick. My friends and I used to explore this old factory/processing plant, no idea what it was originally. Anyway, it had lots of underground sections which were pitch black even a couple of meters from the entrance, but which also required going down a flight of stairs. One time we found a burned out car 2 to 3 levels down, no idea how it got in there, but that was kinda creepy. Another time we found a hole. We didn't bring torches, flashlights, with us because we're idiots, but we had lighters and were trying to figure out what the hole was or if it could lead anywhere. We put a stick in there and it ended up being at least 6 feet deep, but we also learned that it was full of some liquid, and if we had fallen in could have easily drowned in the dark. Another time we went a couple of levels down and one of us at the bottom started screaming shrieks of absolute terror, and the rest of us thought we were all going to be murdered. We all started running, everyone was screaming at this point. There was this sludgy shit on the ground and some of us slipped and fell just like in a goddamn horror movie, slipping and sliding, our limbs out of control. Again, there's 6+ people screaming bloody fucking murder with absolute fear and terror on their faces, so we all thought we were going to get murdered. Turned out a bird had made a nest down there and my sister got spooked and my friend screamed like a bitch. I was exploring a certain abandoned mill near a large city on the coast with a friend. We snuck in, messed around a bit, and realized that we only had one flashlight. Took turns, weird noises, dark inside because there's no power, evidence of homeless occupation and empty needles. Real horror game material. We come up stairway and turn a corner. Ahead is a walkway bridge, aka the way to the rest of the building. To the right is a pitch black room that doesn't feel very nice. As we walk towards the bridge, the flashlight picks out a sign that says "TO, Hell," and points towards this dark room. We didn't go in. Didn't feel right. Last winter I went into this abandoned parking lot under a closed shopping mall. It had 2 levels. The upper level had a bit of sunlight going in through the windows, but the lower level was pitch black. I made my way down this wide ramp that the cars would use and I decided to have a look at the bottom level. After turning my flashlight on, I noticed that the space was huge, much bigger than the upper level. I remember how the light danced through the many supporting pillars and casted vivid shadows. I said, "Hello," and "I'm just taking a look around," just to make my intentions clear, but was met with no response. So I decided to walk around for a bit, but couldn't see anything of interest, just a lot of junk, some empty old bottles, but nothing that might indicate someone living or hanging around there. The place seemed completely abandoned. However, this uneasy feeling that someone might be hiding in the pitch black shadow of one of those pillars took the better of me and I climbed back up the ramp. I left taking different route and passed under an overhead clearing that snow had fallen through. Just as I was about to hop the fence and leave, I noticed that the patch of snow that had formed had footprints in it. I know this doesn't really sound horrifying when you read it, as the logical explanation was that some poor chap had probably taken shelter from the cold inside the lot. But still, being there creeped the hell out of me. I had one creepy experience I already told, but my friends who always go exploring told me about this time. They were just following a trail that went into the hills, and after almost reaching the freeway, they ended up near an old closed-up train tunnel. They were able to squeeze through some loose fencing, and after wandering through with nothing of interest, they eventually came to a bunch of shipping containers. They told me that when they glanced inside, they saw a ton of guns and ammo in one and just a shit ton of heavy boxes in the rest. After a few minutes of checking it out, they heard voices from further down the tunnel coming closer, so they got out of there. They also said it almost smelled like the ocean towards the end, so the tunnel might have led out near the beach. Edit/update, some added clarification for those who asked. The place they hiked to was somewhere between Santa Barbara and Oxnard in California, as they stopped on the 101 going southbound and started their hike and ended up returning to the car and going to Oxnard at the end of the day. They made a report to the police, but I haven't heard of anything coming of that on the news or otherwise. Also, some people said it might be smugglers, but given that the crates were unlocked, the tunnel was unguarded, and it was accessible to anyone who wandered out there. I doubt that's the case. If it was, they were either just about to take off or they were really stupid. I used to be really big into urban explo when I was younger. After I got older, I hitchhiked across the USA multiple times and stayed on the road for a little over 3 years. One of the most memorable experiences. South of Omaha, me and 4 other hippies made camp at night in a field of weeds next to a railroad track. We woke up in the morning around 6 a.m. and one of the guys was like, "Do you smell that? Smells like fucking kush." We all were like, sure, go back to sleep. But then another guy was like, "Holy shit, it does smell like kush." Annoyed, I get out of bed, get up and grab my flashlight. I shine it around and notice all the plants around us look sticky. Intrigued, I get closer and realize we camped in the middle of someone's gorilla grow patch of MJ. Sure enough, we all got up and started looking around and even found very well hidden water lines, barbed wire, etc. We started to think about grabbing some of it and taking it with us, but then we heard a gunshot far off and we all froze. Immediately after, we heard dogs barking and the sound of someone moving through the field. We started to rationalize that it was just someone hunting, but then there was another gunshot and it was much closer than the first. Suffice to say, we grabbed our shit and ran down the tracks, half of us barely clothed. When I was in college, a few friends and I went to this local abandoned hotel. It was a swanky place back in like the 50s, but had just been sitting around abandoned and fenced off ever since. We walked by and saw an open window on a second-story ledge and ended up finding an old wooden ladder nearby on the property. We went in and hung around and saw a bit of great graffiti. The whole place was trashed with actual garbage as well as bits of the building that were falling apart. We made it up the staircase to the 3rd floor, looking in each of the rooms. The area we were in used to be the housing for the staff of the hotel. The 3rd floor was covered in garbage from throughout the years. We got to the last room on the 3rd floor and looked in to find a lit candle with no one else around. Realizing we were not alone, we booked it out of there, and once we were outside, looked up to see someone watching us from one of the windows. Now we went to college in a city with a significant homeless problem and assumed we had just stumbled onto someone's home, but still shit freaked us out. They cemented up the place after another explorer fell down an open elevator shaft and broke his legs, and it has recently been renovated and they are turning it into an apartment building. Not the creepiest find, but definitely freaked us out in the moment. TLDR, searching an abandoned hotel, we found a lit candle that wasn't ours and secretly watched by squatter on the way out. I went to Bachelor's Grove Cemetery in IL with some friends during the day, and if it's still open you should go. We didn't know the stories, but a few ghost hunters had their gear and told us different versions of the same tales of how the nearby pond was a dump for bodies and stuff like that. Classic graveyard. A photographer gave us the closest thing to the real story and said that he came there a lot for goth girl shoots and to get stock spooky photos. He never saw anything scary, but at night high school kids would come and party and sometimes weirdos would come and hurt animals, but that hadn't happened in years. We came back at night and saw some older kids slinking in with coolers and backpacks, so we started chatting with them. We got the cold shoulder, but we were theater kids and just bounced from group to group trying to break the ice till one of the ringleader types unzipped his book bag and showed us what looked like a robe and said, "You need to leave." No idea if it was something culty or if he showed me his picnic blanket and didn't want to share his bruise, but it worked. We noped out. My wife and I and a friend of ours were exploring an abandoned state-run school for troubled youth with a very nasty history that includes the torture and death of some of the students. Behind the campus through some woods was a grave site with a couple dozen simple crosses to mark the graves. My wife and I were working on photographing the crosses and our friend was wandering around the grave site probably 50 feet away from us. He hurries over to us with eyes as big as saucers and tells us he saw someone in the woods watching us. Considering how we were not in our hometown, trespassing, and near a county jail, we packed our gear up quickly and started heading back the way we came. We would stop every so often in the woods between the grave site and the school to watch and listen. I never saw the person that was supposedly watching us, but I did hear someone else walking through the woods after us. Edit, remembered another one. Another time we were exploring an abandoned warehouse. We just got in and were walking around the large storage facility in the back when we heard what sounded like a can getting knocked over coming from the offices in the front of the building. We decided to check out the noise before we got into exploring the place and photographing it. All three of us sneak up to the front of the building. I take lead and start navigating the hallways as quietly as possible looking for the source of the noise. I look into one of the offices expecting to find a cat or some other sort of stray/wild animal, only to find a person kneeling in a corner of the room, facing the corner, and rocking forwards and backwards. I turned back to the group, gave the signal to get the hell out, and we ran for it. A group of my friends and I explored an abandoned asylum/mental hospital a couple years ago in the OKC metro, very unsafe at night for silly college freshmen like ourselves. The first experience we had was all of us taking our merry time enjoying the darkness and generally fucking around. You have to come in through a broken window, and we were all gathered at the window just being dumb when we hear loud, echoing footsteps down the hall running towards us. We all did that, who the heck isn't here? Who's messing with us? Look and turn and, after realizing we're all present and none of us are sprinting down a dark abandoned hallways, booted out of there. The second time, we could hear a group of people messing with us, jumping from around corners and such, but they never got too close. We assumed it was an animal at first, but got brave, and realized it was a person. We managed to catch them and, after staring at a collection of seemingly drugged-up 20-somethings, who begged us for cans of paint and cigarettes, we got the not-so-good vibes, finally, you say, and tried to leave. The leader of the haunted asylum cronies asked if we had jewelry, which we denied. He then said the creepiest thing I've heard in my life. I like jewelry. I take it off the girls here when they sleep. We fucking bolted. My friends and I broke into an old Nazi bakery that used to be a part of the Sachsenhausen concentration camp complex. This is just outside of Berlin. At one point we randomly heard footsteps walking around inside and we weren't sure if it was our imaginations, a drifter who had followed us in, or a ghost. We picked up wooden boards and blocks of concrete and other debris around us to use as weapons just in case. Edit, for the curious, I have more urban exploring stories about weird places like this. Berlin and northern Germany in general are full of abandoned buildings and sites. I also went to an abandoned 19th century hotel on the Ostsee once. We were kids exploring an underground flood channel. There were spots we could climb up and dangle our arms out of the storm drains on the street, but that required crawling up weird diagonal tunnels. There was 4 of us, maybe 12 years old. 1 flashlight. The walls were all graffitied with a lot of gang stuff, and even warnings to turn back, blah blah blah. We just took it as other kids that were bored. We got to the spot where the ceiling angled down quite low to the point the opening was so small we had to crawl to continue. Challenge accepted, it looked like it opened up again shortly. So we crawled through 5 to 6 feet of the low area, and when it opened back up, it looked like we were in a large round concrete pipe, before it was square or rectangular. Still lots of graffiti. We started yelling and playing with the echoes, then we thought we heard something so we got quiet. Then a real loud, "You are going to fucking die," came echoing from the darkness. The kid with the flashlight ran so fast and the rest of us were left in absolute darkness. Anyways, this was the first time we went past the low spot, but the last time we went down there. None of us died that day, the rest of us ended up quietly and slowly walking out in the darkness. A lone abandoned farmhouse in northeast Iceland, Langens. This was real edge-of-the-earth stuff, a few hundred meters from the Arctic Ocean, about 10 kilometers from the nearest sealed road, and not a single soul for miles. I was on my own and just headed up to it for a quick explore. I was on fieldwork up there for other reasons, went inside. It wasn't too messed up inside, not much furniture, some things left in the kitchen with a homemade poster saying, Edermat 1982, a festival that celebrates the bringing in of sheep before the winter, so it was abandoned at some point after then. I was about to go to the top floor and heard a creaky. Stopped and listened for a few seconds, nothing else. Fine. Went up 2 more steps, heard the creak again and genuinely 2 or 3 footsteps, or at least the sound of it. This really got the hairs on my neck up. Now, logically I knew there was essentially zero chance of anyone else being in there, and I enjoy thinking of myself as a reasonable, not easily spooked man. I went up 1 more step, then heard 2 more footsteps, and something slam onto the floor above. I legged it. Ran back down the stairs, out of the farmhouse, back into my Land Rover and headed off down the track. Never did find out what it was, felt stupid, but my love of horror movies took control of my brain and told me to run from footsteps in the attic of an abandoned farmhouse. At least I got a few good photos. I was working as a motorcycle messenger in LA. I had a delivery to an address in the bird streets behind the Chateau Marmont on Sunset. This is a ritzy hood full of 80-year-old mansions behind walls and gates. The address wasn't too far up the hill, maybe Oriole Street. I find the address. The gate is hanging open. I drive in. There's an old Jaguar with 4 flat tires sitting in the circular driveway. The Jag obviously hasn't moved in years. The grounds, however, are not overgrown. Most of the windows on the mansion are broken though. And the front door is hanging open. I bang on the door and yell, no response. I walk in. The place is a ruin. It's winter time. It's dusk. There's a drizzle. I walk through the mansion. The fancy parquet floors are warped and rotting. The walls are peeling. A chandelier has fallen from the ceiling. I walk up a once grand staircase. The banister has collapsed. Several risers are missing. I get upstairs. There's at least a dozen bedrooms. Funny thing is, there's no creeper vines. No signs of rodent incursion or bird nesting. There's at least 12 bedrooms on the 2nd floor. All empty, except one, which has a super jumbo king-sized box spring and mattress, sitting on the floor. The bed is neatly made with cheap Walmart sheets and blankets. There's a milk crate nightstand and clip-on light. There's no ashtrays, no empty bottle, no discarded drug paraphernalia. There's a Gideon Bible on the nightstand. I call in, "You sure this is the right address?" Dispatcher reads back the address. I check the package. There's no name on the package, which I didn't notice before. I walk back out and check the curb for the painted address. I am in the right place. I call in, describe the setting. I'm not going to be able to get a signature. The dispatcher calls the customer. I stand by for a few minutes. Leave the package on the bed, says the dispatcher. So I do. To this day I have never been able to track down who it was that was living so eccentrically at that address. Or what on earth I was delivering. The package was a manila bubble wrap with a bulge in it. About the size of a pill vial, but heavier, like a gemstone.